How's it going, everybody? So a little bit of quick housekeeping. If you're watching this, I'm probably going to be doing a lot more streaming, both here and on YouTube or on Twitch. Depending on how the speedrunning stuff does on here as well, I can dual stream it or not. Just kind of let me know in the comments if you guys are interested in that, and if not, that's fine. I'm gonna keep this focused on card games and Final Fantasy in particular. So, trying to catch up. There's been a lot of big tournaments recently, but the one that I want to talk about the most, sorry, the Spanish Materia Cup, is the FFTCG Standard Championship 2024. So, I believe this tourney is their big tourney for the year. It's really, really early, actually. Like they're going to have to go through two metas before like Worlds, but this is the full Top Cut breakdown. So I don't know what the number of entrants were. I think they had it on Twitter, but actually let's pull that up real quick. Some live editing done cheap. FFTCG squeeze, because this usually has like the full deck breakdowns for the standards for the championships as well. Yeah, here we go. So it's the top list. I need the champion. Where's the deck breakdown? You guys always have it. Apparently we. Oh, here it is, right here. So 22 players on Knights. Wow, that's a lot. Kind of a snapshot of the Japanese metagame. Again, when I think of the Japanese meta, I think of like super, super extremes. The most Unga Bunga aggro decks possible, and the most like almost win conless control decks are like what Japan really loves to play. With like no in between. There really is not a lot of mid range that tends to do well or like show up in Japan. So 22 Knights, 9 Ice Lightning. That's actually a really high number. 9 Earth Water. I imagine some number of that is going to be Chaos Arc. 9 Warrior of Light. 5 of them on Barts, actually, which I'm really surprised at. I really thought that, especially with like Air's dominance, and we'll get to Air in a little bit, but I really did not think the Bart's variant was going to take off in Japan, especially given like the sheer amount of aggro and the EX burst that they have it marked as normal, but like the classic Refia control build does. But like the Bart's Refia list is like it's very fast, but it's also like it's so much more prone to losing to these aggro lists. I'm actually kind of surprised. 7 mono earth, 6 gigawalls. We're starting to get into some other stuff. So mono fire. This is fire water. I wonder if that's like the Tori Kelly realm list. They don't usually break that down. This is wind lightning. That's none of those made cut. So, but I'd be curious to see what those look like. Fire lightning 13. This is that like OTK deck that like you don't see a lot of. Ice Lightning 8. So Ice Lightning actually has even more players than it was there. Next post. 2 mono wind players. One of them did convert to Top Cut, so that's interesting to see. 2 mono waters. 2 avalanche players. None of those converted. 2 13s. Earth, water. Oh, is that going to be like Earth? Is that darkness? Earth, water. Oh, that's Earth, Ice, Kieran. Interesting. Okay. Interesting that Kieran gets an archetype in there, but okay. Water, lightning, fire, earth, water, and then 4 element wall. I guess this is like the 4 color good stuff, and then like a bunch of other. Let's just see. I guess only the 1 mono ice player, 1 chocobo deck, 1 Leo deck, 1 hippocampos. That's kind of funny that it got broken down. Firewind, Neo X Death. Ew. Ice Water Neo X Death, Ice Earth, Wind Water, Fire Water Earth Crystal Chronicles. That's kind of cool. Fire Earth Lightning Waltzes, and then Wind Water Sky Pirates. So yeah, very heavy presence of knights. Looks like the control deck of the format was Refia control, either with or without Bart's. Looks like kind of Ice Lightning was like the mid-rangey like deck that I must have a decent matchup into Knights, so I'm guessing it was taken as kind of an anti-meta call. And Lightning does have some tools to combat what like the Refia deck does. Very different meta than you see in North America for sure, though. And definitely, like again, I'm talking North America just because it's the one I look at the most, but also like Australia also has its own like different meta. So here's the tourney results. Winning deck was Ice Lightning, and honestly, it's pretty normal. Definitely like it's funny. Ice Lightning is just kind of like pressed for space, and I don't think people realize like just how good like the density of Ice Lightning cards that are good to like pair together in this list is just really high. I mean, we're talking about like Ishtola. It's definitely a mid range list because we're on like Shinryu. Shinryu 14. I was about to say I'm surprised there's only 2 Shinryus, but that's a very different one. So if you can stick it against knights, it's actually pretty good. Knight stacks are very forward dense, so you're very likely to get like the 7k power reduction, and you have like a weird floodgate if they can't remove the Shinryu. But it also doesn't do anything on entry against that deck. It is very good against Refia. It's really good against like Mono Water. It's really good against Giga Wall. So I actually kind of like the tech. I think this card kind of coming back into the meta has been a really interesting development. 2 copies of Garuda. I think this card has been so much better than I gave it credit for when I first read it. I mean, again, you want to talk about a card that kind of deals with the meta. You can clear like all the 2-cost knights without actually killing the Corilla, which is really, really powerful. I mean, the rest of these cards we've seen plenty in times. I like seeing the 2 Zeromas. Interesting to see this Lightning go down a little bit. I think she's kind of started to fall off a little bit, lose a bit of her luster. Like, she's still fine, but I think she's starting to feel a little bit expensive. Triple L Sid, I've seen a lot of like lists start to cut him. So interesting seeing that he's coming back in a little bit. I just think he plays so well with everything this deck is trying to do, and especially with the amount of aggro. Ice Lightning can kind of be like a mid-range aggro deck that can beat aggro by like, just using Al Cid to lock things down, dull freezing them. This really might just be like, that might be why Al Cid's in here actually, is I think Al Cid does do very well at like being an aggro card that beats other aggro decks. The full 3 copies of Ixion, because we don't have any 3-drops in the deck at all, this is, or 2-drops, this is one-sided if we're going for 2s. Definitely would help against knights. And then I think this Ramu is kind of underrated. Just a nice little kill spell for 2 CP. The backups pretty standard. I think the only thing that's a little bit surprising is like we didn't go all in on either of our engines. We're on 2-1, 2-1. But both these have very strong alternate targets if the 1 is gone. So it sort of makes sense. I guess we did go all in on the restrictor engine. And then nothing too surprising in the limit breaks. This is, I guess, like I would say, like missing the second surges, but like 1 Victoria for a surges might have been good here, just given how good that card is. But I also could see just like I'm going to cast 2 clouds and a surges every game. I don't need because like if you go to 2 surges, you should go to 3, which I guess means you have to cut your Leela. How does this do into Sid Randell? I mean, I guess like Shinryu can deal with it. Lightning can deal with it. It doesn't love Sid, but it can play under it. You've got like the Ramus as well. So very interesting. Mono Ice. So this isn't one that if you follow just the North American meta, you might be a little bit surprised. This is the wrong Noctis. Maybe that is the wrong Shinryu. The deck was entered incorrectly. But this was not this Noctis seeing play. This was the Opus 15 Party Attack Noctis. I will pull that up right now, actually. But the aggro ice players in Japan stopped playing Rug. And the reason why, I guess, is that like Rufus by himself generates a lot of pressure and creates issues. And while Rug can make Rufus better, Rug without Rufus is not nearly as scary. Sure, like, Rug last well is good, but like you still have the same issue of like when the board gets dealt with, it's a lot worse. So what you have instead is Noctis, and Noctis pairs very well with cards like this Red Mage that like want to be party attacking every turn. And this becomes a card advantage engine. It allows you to have removal, which Rug doesn't give you. It gives you same like dull freeze of characters if you need to. It gives you card draw. It just ends up being like really, really powerful in an aggro deck to be generating card advantage as you attack. The old Avalanche decks that party attacked a lot come to mind as really comparable, like decks that would try to punch you very quickly and try to like lock you out of the game, which is what this mono ice deck is doing. Cards like Lufenian. This card shows up. Nothing fair is ever happening. Same with like Kazusa, just trying to go turn one, rip 2 cards from your hand, dull freeze your backups, and basically make it impossible to Shantoto. But Noctis is a card that's so much cheaper to get on the field and a lot better in those scenarios. So it's an interesting adjustment. I do wonder how much the Rude Reno package actually comes up. I mean, these cards are like fine, but like Reno really wants you to have at least one backup for him to be good. I'm guessing probably we're not all in on it because we aren't on the Cisne at all. Like no copies of the new Cisne for like doubling our attack triggers and trying to kill as quickly as possible. The full 3 Sid Randell, no mute to search it. I'm almost surprised at. Again, you're just trying to stun your opponent long enough to kill them, and this deck is very adept at that. You'll also notice the curve is extremely low and mostly even costed. So even like one of the issues with Lufenian is that like when you play Lufenian, a lot of times you don't get a ton of advantage off of the backup. But I mean, with the Shiva, the Reno, you can kind of make use of it. You do need like the second backup for it to matter. The full 3 Kate Sith is really interesting and I think really powerful here as well. I think that like there's so few answers to what an aggro deck like this is doing that if you can rip it out of the hand before they can play it, maybe you actually stand a chance. Like you can stop your opponent from ever even having a chance in the matchup to begin with. It does not look fun to play against in the slightest, but also like I think it's very funny that they have 1 Leela and 2 Clouds with no lightning cards when they could just play 3 Leelas. Is that ever going to come up? No. Like, if they need to cast a Leela, they only ever need 1. You're probably going to go for 3 Surges first. But technically, you could, like, want a Surges and a Leela and do it twice. So, like, they should have that instead. But the difference is so marginal. Like, Leela only comes up usually to out Sid Randell. And this deck doesn't really care about its entry effects that much anyway. But I guess it does, like, cards like Laswell and Argath. But, just as much of it is like on attack triggers. And like Ishtola is a natural out to Sid Randell anyway. We have a Knights list. Kind of interesting to see what Japan is looking at for theirs. This is about what I would expect. We're all in on searchers for the Karilla. I think we have maxed out Steiner, Delita, Gawain, so we have all of our multi-element cards for our... Oh, I wonder... Okay, now I'm going to go on the Twitter account and see if that's the right Meath, because the Noctis has me a little scared. Lulu, Bartz, Amaterasu, Bartz, Lulu, Citra, Nero. Here... 7H, yeah, it is that Meath. So, I mean, I don't dislike the Meath. The downside is that you can't really search Ramza outside of Larsa, so you have just fewer searchers. But being able to trade in any 2-drop to get to Laswell is very good. So I don't hate that. Interesting that we split our Agriuses. I kind of just feel like if you're good with one, you're good with the other. If we want more water to be able to play Karilla more consistently, just go to 0 of this Agrius. Like, the crystals don't really matter. So, like, interesting decision, I think. 1 copy of Porum. This will help them deal with I guess this is your Sid Randell out. You can go like Meath, pitch any of the 2-cost knights. Like actually, that's a reason not to play this Agris if we're on this Meath. Now that I think about it, if we want to like guarantee last will access. Yeah, actually, the more I think about it, the more I'm just like play the 2-drop ice one, and then like bump your Porum count if you need more ice or more water. Similarly, we're only on 2 Lilith. 2 Renoa, that's fine. That's understandable. The full 3 Amaterasu and the 1 Moody. I actually really like this package, like the Moody and Knights. I think like one of the strongest thing Knights can do is present a big field with an Amaterasu to back it up. Basically saying like, if you don't have a summon that outs my field, I just win the game. And a Moody, obviously, as extra copies of Amaterasu, is very good. And going first, Knights usually wants to play a backup because it makes the Corella and the Ramsa cheaper. And you also like need a target for your last wall to hit, right? So definitely an interesting take on it. You also see the 1 Larcacus. You see this in a lot of aggro decks, like particularly the Magissa decks are pretty infamous for this, but it ends up being like a 1 CP removal spell if you just are willing to like sacrifice a backup slot. And this deck literally is only playing 4 backups, so it doesn't mind the Larcacus slot at all. So so here is the really interesting one to me. This was one that caught my eye. But this is Air's list. And Air, I've been kind of saying, when I talk with people, that he is the best player in Japan right now. He got kind of run over by the Mono Ice deck in Top Cut. But I think that, like, Air's Refia lists were, like, the thing that got it on the map. Like, with... I think Mike probably would have played it anyway, but I think, like, I don't know how much that the deck would have taken off everywhere else had Air not been as dominant on the deck as he'd been. And you'll notice that this is a Bart's Refia list, which I'm very, very surprised at. I actually really thought that like the Bartses were just not a thing that Air was on. And I think even the Bart's choice is interesting for the extra Barts. We'll kind of get to that in a little bit, but the backups account is still really, really high. One of the things that Bart's, in theory, could enable you to do is run a lower backup count, but we still have, 3, 6, 9, 12 EX bursts in our backups with this list, which is actually, like, really, really potent. You still have the full 3 Sarah. Sarah, obviously, is, like, its own Bart's chain. We had to split our arcs. I mean, this thing is... The Opus 10 arc is insanely strong, but it is nice to have access to a Wind Warrior of Light backup. Almost wonder if like a wall here would be a better choice. Like I know that like it's got like a 1 in 3 chance to miss, but I feel like in a slower matchup you might be able to take the time off. And if you hit a Bart's with the wall, you feel pretty good. Also could hit like a King Tycoon. Like hitting King Tycoon with wall would be really nice. The 2 Luniths, again, this is like pretty normal for Bart's, other than the fact that we try to keep like all the EX burst backup still in the list. Summons, this is pretty much the normal ratios. I think Air at one point was on 3 Mist Dragon, no Lev 6. So, I mean, sure, gets your burst count up to 20, which, the nice round number. Some other stuff that like is kind of interesting here. To make room for all the Barts is we cut Une entirely, which is another thing that this deck is going to struggle with aggro even more, honestly, because Une is... In some matchups, like against like Knights, sometimes you just have to play Une and pray. Like just say like Une is going to have to like do a lot of work for me this game. I think like 13 is another like matchup you can consider where like just the 9k body and removal spell is just kind of worth it. We also had to cut Ferris to 2. It's not the end of the world. I mean, we have like the Bartses, like we have lots of ways to get to Ferris. And Ferris really doesn't have a lot of text until you get to, like, the difference between Ferris at damage 2 and Ferris at damage 3 is huge. 2 Zidane, this is what Air's been on the entire time. Obviously, it's my preferred ratio as well. I know that North America's been on 3 Zidane lately. And that's it. I mean, the forward count is very low. The only other thing that's like kind of noteworthy is the extra Bart's choice. We were on 3 light Barts, which obviously this card is very, very strong. I usually like it at 2. Like I know that like hard drawing it is good, like fine. It's like if you play a 1-drop forward that has a 4-drop kill spell attached to it, it's like not bad either. But it is just like it's 3 light cards in a meta where you can just get run over by aggro. And then this Bart, and I've kind of wondered like why players are on this Bart. It wasn't until I watched it that like the first special being like Lulu at home, where you can like discard a copy of Bart's to do 5k. Like it can come up. I still kind of think that like I would go for just like the 2-cost untargetable one, just because it's like a Warrior of Light that like gets really really big and can't be targeted. So like with Refia, you can have this like a big blocker, but again, this one's fine. Maybe you could like pull off the dream of like the Spellblade dual wield rapid fire combo. I don't think so, but I mean it could happen. Does it even get haste? Oh, it does. It does get haste. So if you can like go Barts, 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 you can technically do it. I really don't see that happening ever. It really is just like you can do a special to do 5,000 damage to something. Part of me almost wonders at this point, like I guess like you want to be able to cascade into it, but like one copy of the Bart's backup that like activates all your characters, like maybe the burst could be relevant potentially. It's like maybe like a bit of cope, but it is still named Bart's. It just is missing the Warrior of Light job. Does give you like an EX burst, even if it's not a super powerful one, but like it could matter against knights or like the mono ice discard decks. Just kind of interesting thought, stuff that I've been like kind of dabbling with in like deck building. Um, so we have Hara. Hara, I'm guessing, is one of Air's testing partners because they ran very similar lists. The only difference is I think yeah, the one copy of Lev 6 is not in this list. We're just on the full 12 summons here. Uh, for the rest, Mono Wind by Kaka. This is pretty much the standard list. I mean, actually, it's not that standard. We're on Citra Legend as opposed to Shinryu. I've heard some rumblings that like she's really good in it, like getting a Dryad when you need it, or just like she does sort of work like Izana and getting you like a Chocobo cast. Because the templating for summons, you can't like play a summon; you have to cast it. So Citra is like a 3 CP character that like gets you 2 summons or 2 casts. Like that's pretty solid. But it does make you even more Luso reliant when you can't just like Shinryu your way out of a bad situation. 2 Zidane, North America, a lot of times it's been on 3 Zidane as the standard. 2 Atomos is also a little bit unusual. A lot of North American Storm lists are on, or like European ones more specifically, because I think NA has kind of given up on like mono wind in this form. You'll see a lot more like dabbling with cards like Philo to have water for Leo. I mean, the summons, this is a pretty standard, like, Storm summon list. Backups. I think the only other difference here is the Mog BE over the second Carpenter. I think for the most part, otherwise, it's pretty normal. So it's mono wind. It does mono wind things. Typhon, I imagine. I mean, like I would say Typhon's here to deal with stuff like Citadel, but this deck also has Dryad, which can deal with Citadel very easily. I mean, it's mono wind, so. Also, Wind Water by Shido. This is another take on a cast deck, but it's wind and water. So I think we're just splashing just enough water to play stuff like, yeah, you can go Sarah into King Tycoon into Lena, kind of get your burst count up. We're on 16 bursts. One of the big downsides of like the classic wind storm deck is there's only 6 bursts in this list. There's the 3 Alexanders and the 2 Chocomog. Oh, wrong Chocomog. That's the wrong Chocomog. The 2 Chocomogs and there's one more burst. Where's the burst here? Oh yeah, the 1 Chocobo something here. So like that's like the big downside is like we're on 6 bursts. This is on 16 because of like Cullen and Poo Poo, Lena, King Tycoon. These are all cards that like Mono Wind is very happy to play. Kind of cute to see that you have to. People are playing the Wind Princess Sarah. I think is a card that's like better than she's given credit for. Here she's just like a Princess Sarah that you can search with Sarah or Princess Sarah that isn't Amaterasu-able to lock you out of your Shinryus. It's a pretty like silly reason to play the card. I imagine like the action ability, you probably use it like both of them, like saying 0, like okay, Rosa can't be chosen by EX Burst, or Zidane can't be chosen. Like those are all like powerful text. So also being able to like protect your Rosa could be impactful, or like get a big Warrior of Light on the field. I'm a little surprised. Do we have? Yeah, we don't have any like one copy of Vieira and the backups. Like Warrior of Light can get you a backup could be really really potent here. It would like cut in like probably like the Nash would have to go, and I get the idea is like you can loop this Nash to really make it impossible for like control decks to set up into your combo. But I do wonder like that could be something to look at as well. Yeah, we're all in on all the summons. The 3 Shinryu. No Evray. That's very surprising. We can't search it, but it still is like it's just good. 3 Luso is also non-standard as well, by the way. I think we have one more list. Warrior of Light. I think this is... Yeah, this is just classic Refugee Control. This is really close to the list that Air used to play. We're on 13 summons, again, the 22 backups. We made room for 2 copies of Shantoto. When I say that like Japan is all in on like their control decks they play, this is what I mean. 22 backups. But 21 bursts. The Argy is in here to kind of deal with some of these discard matchups again. In Japan, there's like when you have your opponent has Laswell, you can discard the Argy and get it back in the next end phase, so like Laswell can't like attack your hand. It's also relevant like your opponent like Rufus is you, and you have Argy, you just like no longer are discarding cards to Rufus. Basically, like you need a lightning card to play Cloud. This is one you can get with Tyra that can potentially like protect you from discard. It's a choice you can run instead of like what I've been doing with the Golbez. Other than that, pretty normal list. I think the second Arc and second Une got cut to increase the Shantoto count and the Ingus count to really push those backups up. But that was the Japanese FFTCG Center Championship. Again, big congrats to... let me make sure that name is right. Ice Lightning. Yeah, I think that is. Yeah, Toyota Fusalis. Big congrats to Toyota Fusalis on winning the tourney. Looking forward to seeing more. And yeah, I guess pretty soon I should be going over the Spanish Materia Cup. But in the meantime, yeah, thanks for watching, everybody, and see you all in the next one.